Good morning, everyone, and welcome to American Scousers Morning Coffee or Tea with American Scouser on a Tuesday morning. We are doing this every single day now. I'm going to try to bring like different guests from like other sites and stuff like that too, but kind of doing like a retro throwback to the solo days I used to do when Mecca had to get a gig and kind of abandon us in the morning. If you've been following the morning show for quite some time, it's the morning coffee show. So the morning coffee is here. Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays obviously have their designated mugs. So we are now auditioning officially for a Tuesday mug. Today's candidate, who is invisible because he's green, is Kermit. So Kermit is in the house. He's actually green and loving it. So I do have Kermit this morning to kind of keep him company along with you guys. So we'll take a couple of the headlines. I actually was going to address this last night. There was a couple of comments, one on the YouTube side, one on the Facebook side of things, in terms of Curtis Jones comments about Aiden Hazard and Mo and stuff like that. And I did not want to bring it up because I did not know the full context to be able to even like kind of discuss it with the boys last night. I didn't even know if they knew the full context, so I did not want to dive into something where maybe we were not 100% positive how it came about, how it was said, and all that kind of stuff. So we'll get to all that. First off, I wanted to address another issue I think that never came up yesterday when we were talking about the Champions League game. Is we did talk about like Konate being the one in the pre-match interviews, like the press conference ordeal, so which kind of like outlines that he's probably going to start. But more importantly, he did mention something regarding that he is actually was offered a contract. I thought that was kind of interesting. He did say also that they were like far from it, but we were talking about this throughout the season. Like, hopefully, we're learning from this lesson and not letting everybody run out their contracts towards the ends and stuff like that. So it was kind of like nice to at least see that we have started the process. And yeah, you are going to be any negotiation starts where it could be just Liverpool feeling out, what Konate has in mind, what he's expecting, and stuff like that. I mean, he does seem to be, when healthy, he does seem to be the one that is going to be like carry on Van Dyke's role in this team in terms of like leading the back line. I guess the only issue would be, and I think this can be argued. I understand why people would question if we should go a long-term contract with someone who was not as reliable, or I mean, because one thing with Van Dyke has been the fact that he has been consistent and healthy, and he's been there. Aside from the freaking Pickford butchery, I mean, he has been there for us, and he can be relied on. That's why he's worth every penny. Whereas you could argue with Konate, is that going to be the case moving forward, especially as he gets older? But he's a very young dude, what, 25 or something like that he is. So I thought that was interesting, and it was kind of good news, I think, on paper at least, that the club kind of has learned from their lesson and are like started the process at least to talk to Konate and started the contract process. So I think that's good news. We'll pretty much leave it at that because he pretty much left it at that, that the negotiations or the conversation has started. And that's, really all you can ask for in the initial stages. And it's a good sign. Hopefully they seal these deals, especially for players that we feel like are going to be a part of the future. Hopefully they seal those deals a lot earlier and, get him in the door for the long term. So let's get to this Curtis Jones thing. I thought actually it's, leave it to the Liverpool fans to kind of like pick that out of that entire, what is the show, Between the Lions or something like that, right? Rio Ferdinand does like a Liverpool version of it where he talks to Slot and then he talks to Curtis Jones. Excuse me, this cold is still here, so it's not going anywhere, people. So much for what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. Not the germs, apparently. They freaking travel back with you. So I have managed to bring those back. But good morning, Cersei. I think actually Cersei was one of those on the YouTube side of things asking about the Curtis Jones comments. But now that I watched the full thing, leave it to Liverpool fans, like I was saying, to watch that and walk away with that at the end, and like nitpick and attack Curtis online and stuff like that, and like leave the nasty messages and stuff that crazy fans do. But I thought there was a lot of other good stuff on there to take away from that, especially from slot side of things. A couple more things to be picked up on, as opposed to, Curtis Jones saying Aiden Hazard he thought was a better footballer, but he did say as a teammate, like if he's building a team, he would want Mo. So here's the ordeal. I don't know. I'm always been against this comparing of players who played, well, like a decades from each other, approximately, right? Especially with like Aiden Hazard, especially when his peak compared to Mo's peak. So, because I don't think it ever makes sense. I don't think you can ever make it. It's like the Michael Jordan or Kobe Bryant and stuff like that. But I'm gonna get back to that analogy because basically Curtis Jones, as a kid growing up, watched, idolized, and kind of like fell in love with what Aiden Hazard does. So if we were ever kids, I'm hoping everybody who's an adult now was a kid at one point, and had a player that they watched and then they followed. Those players could do no wrong. Number one, and number two, you kind of like maybe idolize them a bit more than maybe you should, because like you were a kid. Number one, and number two, you're just watching the football aspect of things, and you're just like in awe. I mean, as a kid, you're watching a winger. You're not like, what the defensive work rates? And like, you're not looking at that stuff. You're just basically looking at the player and what they do in terms of scoring, assisting, taking on players, and stuff like that. I mean, growing up, I had like some players, like, Fenerbahce had some players who were just like ridiculous attacking players. Like, I don't know, let's say like Rıdvan Dilmen was one of them. That's, like at the time, Turkey national team sucks. It was a little blip thanks to him and Tanju Çolak and stuff like that, like making it. And so everybody was, a Rıdvan fan because he was amazing on the ball. Anytime he got the ball, something was going to happen, right? But as a kid growing up, what I really admired as I watched was, and nobody's gonna know this guy because he was really like a nobody, probably more like a Carragher-like figure, to be honest with you. He's like Müjdat Yetkiner, who was the sweeper, which a position doesn't exist anymore, for Fenerbahce. And what I really liked about him was the dude was not even that good. Like similar to like in that sense, Carragher-ish, where he was not that good in terms of being an all-around player, but he was a great sweeper. He could sense things. He wasn't physically talented, not a big dude, not a fast dude. Maybe I was like, hey, this is a guy I can be, like watching him, and I did, like, and it was like a great leader. He was the captain, and I kind of like tried to do everything that dude did, and it was more like, I want to say like maybe an idol because he wasn't that great of a player, but in terms of playing style and what you can bring, like that toughness, the captain leadership, like just like as a sweeper coming across and like like getting rid of the danger, sensing things before they even happen and stuff like that. I think that's part of Dr. Ordeal, and I really liked that. So looking back at this, Curtis Jones was doing the same thing to me, watching Aiden Hazard and thinking, like admiring everything that he's saying. Sergi says if Ali or Van Dyke said that, fans would not say anything. I think so too. I think so. I think I agree with that. I didn't know he wasn't. How was he an Arsenal fan growing up? As he was like, isn't he like a Scouser? So how did he end up being an Arsenal fan? Maybe he was. Again, he was a kid, so he's watching at that time like it may be a great Arsenal team. I really like loving how they're playing and stuff like that. I really thought it was made too much of it, and he kind of knew it the moment he said it. So it's just bad maybe to not filter that and not even get out in the first place. But this is what we do, right? When a player is honest, we beat him to death. When they're just giving us the regular company line, we beat him to death. They can't win, so I guess why not be honest? But yeah, I thought it was like way too much was made of it because he was not like adamant about it either. He kind of like mentioned it as like a better player. And I don't know, like he didn't like really explain because I think he realized that he was diving into a territory he did not want to be in that pool. So he was not gonna dive in any further. He just got right out. So I wish like he kind of like followed, because he did say if he's starting a team, if he's building a team, he would want Mo as the teammate. So because I think he realizes that, defensive rate wise and stuff, and not that Mo has the best defensive rate, but I mean Hazard had none, so I think anything above zero is better. So I thought it was made too much of it. Like I say, I'm not even gonna weigh in on it because obviously we're gonna be biased. Number one. And number two, you're comparing different eras, different types. Can Eden Hazard do what he's doing, what he did then now? I don't know. Can Mo do what he's doing back then? We don't know. And that's the problem. I mean, it goes back to, I think, like we always give Matouche, I know the fan, like the audience always gives Matouche crap about, like some, because, different generations have different players they watched and idolized and admired. And you didn't even see the guy before. Like I guess I'll ask him on Monday, but I don't know if like Matoush ever watched Barnes, for example, play. So I think, if you do not watch, you grow up in a generation, you watch those players, you idolize those players, and then you feel like those players are better than the other ones. So it's just a matter of it's opinion for one, and two, it's a biased, almost like a childish, idolizing opinion that nobody should really care about and make a big deal about. And I think Cersei is right. It should not have, um, like, if it wasn't Jones, I don't think it would be as big of a deal. It always feels like people are looking for something on Jones. But I really liked, I mean, this is what I mean. Like, you watch that thing, and if this is what you walked away with, holy mother of God. Because a couple of things he said, without really trying to, bash the old regime, I guess. A couple of things he said that I took notice in terms of like Jones was one, he was talking about being realizing now and maybe being preached more now that a good performance is not just assists and goals. You can have a great performance by not doing any of those as well. And this could be partially because of, like Klopp versus Slot regime, and could be a little bit of his maturity as well, where he understands his role or he's a bit more confident in his skills. It's tricky for a player to come off the bench and feel like this is the only 25 minutes I'm going to get for the next 3 weeks. So I got to do 3 weeks worth of work in 25 minutes. And that's when people kind of like, screw up things a lot more. So I mean, we see it with strikers. I know there was a lot of like complaints about like, Nunez comes in and takes shots. That's a different probably because he's a striker. But for somebody in midfield, especially like Jones, to play within the game and not to always go for the killer pass, maybe go for the right pass instead of the killer pass that's going to go get you the assist and stuff like that. So I thought that was a lot more interesting to hear than him saying Hazard is better player than Mo. Yeah, I mean, Kazi says football is an opinion. Why does anyone actually care? I don't think most people would care, excuse me, if it wasn't Jones saying it, kind of like going back to what Sergi was saying. Good morning, Sparky. Um, yes, and like you say, he did say he would rather have his team. And like I say, I think he realized the moment that conversation gone there, then he was like, ah, shit, this went to a totally different place than I wanted to. So he kind of backed out. I wish he kind of stuck to his guns and kind of like explained it maybe a bit more, like in terms of why, like why did he think one was a better player and the other was a better teammate and all that kind of stuff? But it is what it is. He will get crap for like a week about it, and then nobody will remember it. Hopefully, some fans will. They'll never forget that shit. So I don't understand why this Hazard's Mo thing really sticks in everybody's butts. Like, it's just I really don't get that. I really do not get that. Why we get into these. I consider like a really silly arguments. There was a lot of other good stuff in there that really people should be talking about. One, I was hoping Brian Shelton was watching it because he was talking about Trent and the midfield thing, because they were, like Rio was asking him about, like Trent last year being more like inverted, more coming into midfield, this year more like playing like a right back and stuff like that. And I really do like how Slot explained why he's not there. One, he kept emphasizing running as a key part of being that double pivot. I mean, he said it over and over and over again. You got to be able to run. You got to be physical. So that's a good requirement from that. And another thing he mentioned was those guys' goals, like whether it's Maka or Gravenberg, is not to provide necessarily the assist. but carry the ball up and get it to the guys up top. So move the ball basically from the back line to the front line. So they're not the ones who would probably get the final pass into the box or into the middle. Their job is to carry the ball, find an opening, either with switching or whatever, get it to the wing where Trent would be or Mo would be, and those guys get the ball in the box. I think one thing he mentioned was, and this is why I kept saying it last year, and fighting over why Trent should not be in midfield. One, he does not run as much. He does not give you the defensive coverage that is demanded out of these double pivot positions right now. And two, you're taking away his biggest strength, which is crossing that, whipping that ball in with a curve in a dangerous area, because now he's in the center of the field. You're totally changing his angle. And there was nothing wrong with the old angle to change. So there was no reason for that. So I thought that was pretty important that he explained why Trent is a right back and why it's more effective. And he's one of the, and he did mention, they did talk about his defensive work, and he did mention that he was doing a lot better. And couple of things. I mean, if you're going to read between the lines, there was a lot to read in between the lines than freaking Curtis Jones' opinions on Mo Salah's ranking in world player rankings. One of them was that Trent's defensive performance was based more on will and focus than ability. I think that's huge. And he did mention the United game and him getting the crap and stuff like that. And, that was on Trent. And he did say that, there are times where, because Rio asked him, like, how he approached Trent after that game. Was it like a, hug around the shoulders, slap across the face, which one kind of thing? And it was more hug around the shoulder because I think he realizes that, Trent is that kind of player, number one. And number two, it is a matter of will. So you want, Trent to feel like, if he's trying, if he's doing the focus, he's a good defender and he can show it over and over again. It's when he falls asleep and he gets caught ball watching, or he's more worried about getting that killer pass as opposed to doing his initial task of defending, is when he gets in trouble. So I thought that was interesting that he kind of put it a little bit on Trent himself, how his defensive performance works out. That was one thing that was interesting, that if you were trying to read between the lines. Another thing was when they were talking about Mo and Mo's finishing and shooting and stuff like that. And when Rio asked him about practice, if you guys go back and listen to it, Slug pretty much says, without saying it, that even though Mo probably, when they review, because remember, like when they first came over, they watched all the practice tapes from last year and all that kind of stuff. I think it's one of those where he did not see Mo practicing hard, because he said something along the lines of, yeah, like when he wants to, when it's like shooting drill and they're keeping records and stuff, Mo gives his best and does the work. But at the end, he says he does enough to get himself ready for the game to perform at a high level. So it almost sounded like not as hard as they would like in terms of practicing, but if this is the results to that level of practice, they'll take it and they'll run with it, because ultimately it's the game day performance that counts. I thought that was like really, if you were trying to like really find something in between the lines, I thought that was one of the things that you could find in between the lines, was that when he was talking about Mo practicing and stuff like that. But I thought it was excellent how he was talking about the double pivot, how important those two guys are. But excuse me, it goes back to what we have been talking about in terms of needing more people to be in that position to be able to rotate. So have more players in the squad that can do the job, because they focused on obviously Mac and Gravenberg and showing what they're doing and stuff like that. Especially, it was a lot about Gravenberg because he was one of the players that improved the most. And my fear is, if something happens to one of those, we do not really have. The closest thing you have is Jones. And on a good day, yes, he can do most of the work, but I don't think you can count on Jones to do that work week in and week out. Will Jones eventually be that player and understand it? Because a lot of it, he made it sound like, is defensive instinct as well and being solid defensively, like winning the tackles and stuff like that. My main issue with Jones is, and Jones addressed this. Hopefully, this is something that he will fix in his game and not worry as much about like assists and goals and stuff like that, because he kept emphasizing that the job is to carry that ball from the back line to the front line. So use the space, make your turn, or move the ball, whatever you got to do to move it from the back line to the front line, and not necessarily do the killer pass that gets the assist, but more about get it to players that can kind of create something up top. So it'll be interesting to see if Jones goes into that role, but I do still feel like that is going to be a need for this team moving forward. You need one more player who can kind of be that parts of the equation and actually like make things happen and be able to rotate Gravenberg and stuff. Um, it's interesting because maybe other players are giving 100% training, trying not to get injured before match day. I don't know because he like I say he didn't mention those players, and Mo is the only one that he kind of said but didn't said. Like you almost have to read between the lines, like I say, to kind of like come up with that conclusion. And I might be just like pulling a Curtis Jones, Aiden Hazard thing too, but I took it as that when a manager says that. When a manager says he does as much as he does enough or something like that. He said, I don't want to give an exact quote, but it was something along the lines that he does enough to get himself ready for the game. And you know what? It could be one of those. You know what NFL like some of these like experienced guys get like Mondays off or like the veteran day off or whatever because you don't want to. They're old, already have tired legs. You don't want to run into the ground further, and they know their bodies better than other people. So I think that's a part of that deal too. As you get more and more mature in age, one, your body needs more rest. Two, you know your body better and you kind of understand your body a lot more than a physio that can kind of says, no, this is your ceiling and stuff like that. Because you kind of probably reach the ceiling at that point. You're trying to stay as close to the ceiling as possible. So I can kind of understand that. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But of course, nobody picked up on that. Everybody is picking up on Curtis Jones talking about Aiden Hazard and stuff. So, but I thought that like Slot's thing was very informational. I really like how he kind of breaks down the game and explaining things. Stephen Cook says, "Morning, guys. Need the coffee and as well." It is a bit nippy out there, isn't it? Yeah. Yesterday, I mean, the only time I get exposed to this is when I open the doors for like Stitch and Leo. But holy cow, it's cold out there. I think last time when Layla came back from the gym, it was like -6 out there or something like that. She said, or it feels like -8 or something like that. It is pretty ridiculous here in Illinois right now. And actually, the funny thing is, Alan sent me a photo this morning on Facebook showing that there's snow in Houston. So there's that. But there's snow it's probably like 50s when there's like some snow on the ground. So letting the dog out is an ordeal. Thank God we have the backyard. I'm obviously gonna go out there eventually and do some poop pickup. But yeah, open the door and let the boys roam. Stitch can't just sit out there on the deck and chill. He's just weird. Doesn't matter how cold it is. He'll just sit on the deck on top of the snow and he's just like chill. Whereas Leo's like, yeah, let's go back in, man. It's cold out here. But he doesn't have the fur that's Stitch doesn't. Maybe that's why. But boys in the house. Good morning, everybody. So that was like my biggest takeaways from that. The importance of that double pivots. He did talk about the center backs as well. I really wish they talked to him and asked him a bit more about what he wants from his backs. They talked about Trent specifically. So he talked about, Trent being in spots where he's the best at along the side, crossing that ball in and stuff like that. But I really would like to know, as we speculate, signing Carquez and stuff like that. Everybody's signing a different left back. I really would have liked to know what Slot wants ultimately out of his left back and right back. They did throw some stats that we are number one in shots faced. So basically, like the fewest shots faced, I assume, as well as shots faced from counters. And I mean, I think that was writing on the wall, right? I mean, if you took over Liverpool in the off season, wouldn't that be the first thing that you're like, okay, we're getting killed in counters, we got to stop this, and we're getting goals, first goal conceded all the time. we got to stop this. Once we stop this, everything seems to be working pretty good. And then they make some tweaks. And so I think it was writing on the wall, but I think it's impressive for Slots, one, to be able to fix that problem, because it's one thing to see the problem and notice the problem, to another thing to fix it, but also about doing it. And I talked about this before, but doing it with an established squad is a bit trickier than doing it with a brand new squad. And a squad that realizes they need improvement. But this is an area, maybe, I mean, if you probably did like an exit interview with Liverpool players last year and said, "Hey, what do we have to get better on next year?" They probably would have said the same thing. I think you could have like just looked at the stats and not watched the season all year, and probably you would say the same thing. So maybe it was easy in that sense, because they were maybe like, "Yeah, we got to fix this. What do you think?" And I think what happens then is you implement a plan, right? If that plan works, then everybody's sold. If that didn't plan did not work and you were still leaking goals and stuff, I don't know if it's as easy of a conversion, but I think he's found the right players to do it as well. So I think that's basically the reason behind the success so far. But I really like how he opens up the game. That's why I wish they asked him a bit more questions that were like tactical, as opposed to like Rio trying to use that thing, which is really awkward. I realized they bought that setup over there where you can like highlight people and draw arrows and stuff like that, but if you're not fast with that thing, it's just like very awkward. It looked like a grandpa trying to like get on the internets at times with Rio, and you would think the guy does the show, he would be very fluid with that. Just practice on that for like an hour, dude, so you can do it like a lot faster. So probably could have gotten an extra 5 questions in that segment if Rio could use that thing a bit faster, but we didn't. We just watched Rio like wrestle around with pressing a button, this guy circling him and stuff like that. But yeah, Steven says we need that help for 10 plus years. If Elon Musk plays, I'll reach out to him who works for him directly and invite him to the pods. If Elon Musk buys Liverpool, I don't know if we would have a pod. How many people would stay with this club, to be honest with you? I just don't see it happening, because I don't think the people of Liverpool would let it go, for one. And I just hope to God it just doesn't happen, especially after yesterday. I think we have twice the reasons, and I don't want to get political over here. We already have a political channel in Discord to see how long that freaking lasts. But yeah, especially after yesterday. Thanks, but no thanks. So I'll pass on that. Slato Rio that what he wanted from our fullbacks. Clubs will add a slot tax on the fullbacks we go for. That's a good point. Yeah, I guess that's a good point. But I mean, I don't know. I think I have not watched enough of Feyenoord or whatever in the past to know that. I just feel like he's looking at, he came here. This is the squad, and I think that's maybe was talk with Edwards. Let's work on what we got, and then if it's not working, if it does feel like, because let's face it, if he came in and we didn't do this, we probably wouldn't have Gravenberg where he is now. Right. So it was more about like, maybe we can use him here, maybe we can use him there. Let's see how it goes. And, like we talk about Nunez and we said, well, that one is just not working. So we know that one is not working, kind of a deal. But then he comes in and scores 2 goals. I still don't think it's working. So for the record, and I don't think it is going to work. I hope to see him later today, and I hope he gets a goal. So I hope he gets key goals like this so that he's part of a title winning team who is contributing to that title winning process. But I still don't think he's a fit for the system by any means. So I think it's a season to see what we have. And then if we keep finding ourselves pounding the square peg in, then okay, we'll remove that peg and get you a new one next summer. I think that was kind of the process. What's going to happen in January, where we have like less than 2 weeks here now, is a mystery. But I think it goes a lot to what Sir Z is saying for players in January, not the slot tax part, but just January, everybody has a premium on them, right? Because everybody knows the only reason you're signing people in January is because of a dire need. So the price, obviously, demand goes up, price goes up. We'll do micro and macro in the mornings over here. But yeah, I mean, so because of the demand that they know you want the guy, you need the guy, the price goes up. So It's if you can wait till summer, I know why we would wait till summer. It is risky business, especially I feel like for center back and for midfield, it would have been great to get some depth. But do you really want Ben Davies or Ozan Kabak or something like that done in January so that we have depth? But we don't really have depth. Like you said, we have depth that you never want to see. Like I don't think that's good either. So he might feel that we're better off using Endo back there. That is probably not ideal. Than get somebody else who doesn't understand and all that kind of stuff. So will I like it? No. Will I be okay with it? Yeah. Will I freak out like everybody else? Hell no. And Sergi knows who I'm talking about in terms of freaking out. Yeah, desperation tax. I mean, that's basically what it is ultimately because they know the teams who are selling no. The only exceptions I think are, I mean, like players we have, right? Like the big three that we have, Trent, Van Dijk, and stuff, where they're going to be losing them for nothing when the season ends. If you can find a player like that, then I think you get a good deal. But how many players are like that? Because let's face it, aside from us, not a lot of teams put themselves in the situation where they have players whose contract is going to run out who are worth some value on the market that you get money for. So it's very hard to find those players. So probably not going to happen. I think Boaz was saying like no transaction in January. It's shaping up like that. I don't know if it would bring in, and I get the feeling that we would bring in somebody in the last week that we might never see again. It would be like a hologram guy like Ben Davies was. But here's the thing: like nobody has added anybody yet, despite everybody interested in everybody. City has made some signings, and you can argue that Marmoush can come in and probably start impacting and adding something right off the bat. But I mean, I said it on yesterday's spot too. If we sign the 18-year-old center back they're getting, nobody in here, none of these fans are going to be like, that's the signing we needed. They're going to bitch and moan that, FSG again, buying on value. We need somebody who can play right away. I mean, they're not like a bunch of center backs who can start for Liverpool just in the unemployment line in Europe. So that's going to be very hard to do. Forest have put in a bid for Wissa. I just don't see why Brentford would do that, especially in January. But it would be interesting. I mean, I've been saying this for a while. I'm not worried about Forest in the title race. Hopefully, it doesn't come back to bite me. But I've been saying this for weeks, and I'll keep saying it. A team that can't score goals, that has trouble scoring goals, that is not used to title races, is just not going to be a challenge. Is the way I look at it, and don't have the depth to go with it. So. Yeah, I mean that because they need it, right? I mean, I think Yali was saying it on the podcast last night. If they lose Woods, there's really nobody there. So our boy's there. Awani, is that what his name was? But he's like a big step down and is not consistent. It's just that Forest does not get enough goals, and there will be games they fall behind and they will not be able to dig themselves out of it. I mean, I can pull it up over here real quick, but I know when we were looking at the standings yesterday, um, I mean, they've scored a total of 33 goals. So, I mean, that's hard to. I mean, it's amazing, by the way. In 22 games, they scored 33 goals. That should be like a case study. But they are. Let's put it on the screen over here. I mean, they scored 33 goals and they've got 44 points out of it. That's some peak freaking efficiency right there, I think, out of Forest. But you just can't keep that up consistently. That efficiency level of like, what is that? A goal getting you like more than a point each time is just not going to keep happening. So I just don't see him. It's a smart move for them. Don't get me wrong, but I don't think they're going to do it. My point was, Arsenal is in dire need of a striker, and they're not making any moves. If I was an Arsenal fan, I'd be more upset than Liverpool fans that just love being upset. So if you can't get upset at that, you go get upset at this. If you can't get upset at that, you're like, what did Curtis Jones say? I'm so mad. It's just like, God, man, it's just like, it's hard for people to enjoy things. This is why we can't have nice things over here. But speaking of nice things, we do have the Champions League game later today. It should be interesting. We talked about a bit about it last night. I know what you guys think. I would ideally like to see people like Elliott, Jones, Nunez get starts, Kwanzaa, Bradley. I don't know if that's too many changes for slots to do in a Champions League game. He did kind of like, I watched the press conference. He did want to win it, but he just did not have that normal. We're gonna go out with the strongest team. Suck it's kind of like a like the tone he normally has. So I do hope he does make the rotation and keeps the guys on the side and use them if needed. Will they be needed? I don't know, because whenever we do too many changes, there's always some kind of a disconnect, right? These guys are not used to game speed, and now you're playing next to another guy who's also not used to game speed. It's one thing for, let's say, Elliott and Nunez to come into the game late against now a tired Brentford side who's been like running ragged from like sideways all game, to start against Lille, who is playing a key game, and they would kill for a point over here. Because let me look at that real quick too. But they're right now in the top 8, right? They are 8th, I guess. But there's, I think, like one game difference between them and the 20th in Real, who's like 19 is Club Brugge, and they have like 10 points. So nothing is determined yet, but this is what I wanted to check real quick to see what they have going. And their last game is against Feyenoord at home. So you would think, if you're Lille, you're hoping for a point over here, and then see if you can get the 3 points at home to be in the top 8. I think they're pretty safe in terms of going to the next round, but to avoid that playoff ordeal. And this is what Slaw was talking about, and I kind of like that he said that. That's why I'm like kind of getting they were going to go with the strongest lineup, suck it attitude, because he said being number 1 seed doesn't mean that you're going to get the weakest team, just because there's Real, PSG, and all these teams down there who are going to have to play this playoff round and then come up. So you could be the top seed and play Real in the next round. You don't know. So there's no guarantee. So he made it sound like it's not as big of a deal because there's no guarantee. But we talked about this in the past. I think like Kazi mentioned it several times, because he loves FSG. But it's like 5 million or something like that for each win the clubs get. So maybe he's like, hey, win more, we'll get your center back. I'm sure it doesn't work like that, but I can see why the club would want to win. Not to mention it's a home game. You do want to win at home in the Champions League. Yeah, but it should be interesting coming up later today. No need to speculate the lineup more than we did last night. But no pre-match today, but we'll be here for the post-match to talk about the game. So do join us for that, and I'll be back tonight with the Premier League panel. We'll talk about the weekend's games and look ahead to next weekend as well. But that's it for me this morning. Thanks to all those joining me. Hit that thumbs up and do share the shows, along with, we are looking for more contributors as well, both to our regular American Scouts or Liverpool content, as well as like general Premier League, both for the panel and Premier League shows that we do want to add. So I really do enjoy, and I know what you guys think, and please let me know, but I do enjoy hearing different perspectives, especially from like mature fans who can do it in a professional manner and not like meatheads, but people who can give their perspective of how Villa looks at things, how Arsenal looks at things, and stuff like that. And there's great banter. It's mature, it's civilized. I do really enjoy that, so I'm looking forward to the panel show today. Not sure how many of them will be there tonight, but hoping as many as possible. We'll see if we can get United over there, talk about the worst team of United ever and all that kind of stuff. But have a great day, everybody, and we'll see you guys here on American Scouts right after the game.